Hello and welcome to this conversation on the new BJP by Dr. Nalin Mehta, a book that's received widespread critical acclaim as well as started an intellectual exchange with some prominent intellectuals over the caste structures of the Bharatiya Janata Party. This conversation will revolve around the book and the consequences and the implications that come to the larger practical political world from that book. Joining us will be Dr. Nalin Mehta himself, the author of the book, Dean at the School of Modern Media at UPES Dehradun. Thank you so much, Nalin, for joining us in this conversation. We'll have with us Saba Naqvi, author, journalist, and may I add, an authority on the BJP and Indian politics herself. Saba, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
part of this
My
conversation.
pleasure. Yeah.
As well as Jai Mrug, noted psephologist and CEO of VotersMood Research, who has also helped Nalin in verifying the exhaustive data that was collected and analyzed in the book, The New BJP. An authority on caste structures and connotations in India and Uttar Pradesh. Thank you so much, Jai, for being part of this conversation. Well, obviously, we will be talking about the book and the contents of the book, but we will also go to the broader implications of it. I'd like to structure this conversation like the way Nalin has structured his book into 5 parts, starting in which he deconstructs certain realities of the BJP today in after 2019. Well, to start with, Nalin, let me start with the introduction of the book, where a personal, strongly written introduction in which you draw a parallel between Narendra Modi and India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Uh, your argument or your observation is that Nehru took India in one direction, and it was his stature and presence that ensured that India remained a Western liberal secular democracy till Modi comes to power, where you believe that while other prime ministers just followed Nehru's footsteps, it's Modi who decisively takes India into a different direction. Are you then suggesting, Nalin, when you draw this comparison, that Narendra Modi already enjoys the stature and the power that Jawaharlal Nehru had? Or do you think it will be a few decades before we can assess whether this aspiration has turned into a reality and that he has had such a definitive impact on the political journey of independent India? Nalin.
Thanks, Veera, for that introduction. On the Nehru-Modi comparison, I've called Modi the new Nehru for the Indian cultural right, and I think that's a counterintuitive argument to make. Nehru and Modi are on two opposite sides of the ideological spectrum. Also, Nehru is a hate figure for the right in many ways. The reason why I make the comparison is because Nehru embodied an idea of India. For starting from his famous speech on the eve of independence on the tryst with destiny, which has defined the template and our idea of India for all these decades. Now there was a political consensus on that idea of India. Even Indira Gandhi, often the comparison is made with Indira Gandhi and Modi. But I think the real comparison is Nehru and Modi on two sides, because Indira Gandhi did not embody a new idea of India. She actually carried forward the idea of India that Nehru had with certain variations to it. In fact, in some ways, Indira Gandhi brought in many distortions to that idea in actual practice, even though she was acting in the name of that idea of India itself. What Modi brings to the table, and because of Modi's political ascendance, and because of his stature currently in Indian politics, it is a completely opposite idea of India from what Nehru was. In fact, every prime minister, I'm talking now in the post-Congress years, in the years of the coalition governments and so on, whether I.K. Gujral or Devi Gowda or V.P. Singh and others, nobody, there were political differences, but what defined this idea of India did not change. Modi brings a totally different idea of India to the table, and in fact there are similarities around 4 or 5 different grounds. One, Modi, just like Nehru, whether you agree with him or not, and he completely disagrees with Nehru, is as unambiguous about his ideals as Nehru was. In fact, Modi made this very clear in his election acceptance speech in 2019 after the BJP swept elections for the second time. Just as Nehru single-handedly fought the fight on secularism within the Congress, against the Congress right, as much as he fought against the Jansangh or against the Hindu Mahasabha or the RSS, the bigger fight was internal within the Congress, which he single-handedly held at bay. Modi is as unambiguous ambiguous about his ideals, including on definitions of secularism. Modi embodies a radical break with the past, just as Nehru embodied in different ways. And on their economic ideals, just as Nehru saw the economy as a way of bringing people out of poverty. Now, there's a lot of debate about Modi, about whether he was going to be a new Margaret Thatcher or a new Ronald Reagan in 2014. A lot of people supported Modi for that reason. He's not brought that kind of ideology of economic governance. We can debate about the ideology of governance he's brought, but Modi's economic vision, if there is not that different, even though he comes from a different prism from how Nehru saw the idea of the economy. And then and also the question of children. My generation of Indians, and I think all of us are similar generations, grew up with the idea of Chacha Nehru, this benevolent father figure. Children's Day in India was changed to Nehru's birthday from it used to be earlier on what the UN mandated Children's Days after Nehru's death. We were all flooded with books of which were really about father to the daughter and so on. Modi, one of the most underappreciated aspects of Modi's politics is his outreach to students and teenagers and pre-teenagers. You look at Man Ki Baat, you look at exam warriors, you look at the kind of stuff that goes on the Namo app. This is a very underappreciated aspect of politics which happens below the surface. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Right. Interesting that you make those points. In fact, it's a very interesting comparison. Let me just take that to Sabha quickly. Sabha, your thoughts on whether it's still an aspiration, or do you think he decisively has that power yet? I mean, is it still a few decades before we can judge and draw this parallel?
So I think this is a very important book. So I just want to say that with all the data and all, significant, important addition to, especially on the BJP. But I entirely disagree with the thesis about Nehru. And I have my own reasons. And if you want me to elaborate, I'll elaborate. Nalin, you want me to go ahead? Huh?
Please do, Sabha. We'd love to hear from you.
Number one, Jawaharlal Nehru takes over in the post-colonial world. Many countries would regress, like he was friends with the leadership of Egypt and Yugoslavia and all that. Many countries would regress into dictatorships. Jawaharlal Nehru puts India on the path to democracy. Number one, yes, he was ideological. Secondly, to just use exam warriors and compare it to the discovery of India, it sort of makes me cringe. I mean, just look at the quality of the thought, quality of the writing. Look at all of that. We cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore the quality of the intellectual material. No, Nalin, let me finish. You're behaving
That's why I'm raising my hands about not opening my mouth. I'm just raising my hand.
Go ahead.
No, let me finish.
Number one. Remember that there are several other aspects of the book that need to be touched. We can't start with Nehru.
No, exactly. You started it, so I'm just responding. Number one, Jawaharlal Nehru, as opposed to what his daughter does later. She takes the country. He's a Democrat. There's a lovely bit in Sunil Khilnani's Idea of India when the first communist government is elected in India. He has that anecdote. A journalist, I think, tells him. And Indira tells Nehru we should dismiss them, right? This is, I think, 58, 59. And Nehru says, no, they've been democratically elected. This was the first elected communist government in the world at that time. Indira suggests that, if I remember the book correctly. So we were dealing with a true Democrat, a man of very, very evolved intellectual clarity. And yes, he had an idea because it was the country that he got was birthed in a partition with Gandhi, who chose him to be prime minister over Sardar Patel, with Gandhi being murdered by the right-wing people, by Nathuram Godse, So I don't think you can compare them at all. I think Narendra Modi is an entirely different personality. If Nalin is arguing that in terms of the shift in which he gives India, Nehru nurtured a new nation. I agree with Nalin to the point that Narendra Modi marks the shifting of the nation. On economic policy, I honestly think that they don't have very much except welfareism and certainly benefiting a couple of corporates. They have not shown the kind of ideological vision and all that you need, that the Congress in different times showed. I think they go back and forth between various things, which is why our economy is in such a bad shape right now. There is no doubt,
Go ahead, Jai. Jai, quickly before Nalin.
Yeah, I think the point
Because
Nalin is
because
trying to
I want to add to this.
yeah, the point is like quality apart. I mean, if you go to talk of quality, there's a distinct qualitative difference between the work of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar and Kashiram as well. Right? There's a way. Everybody is going to have their
No, there
own
isn't.
sweet
There
spot.
isn't. I won't interrupt you, huh?
Okay. But I mean, what Nalin is trying to actually refer to is he's trying to say that there is an effort for an outreach, a concerted effort, and now there is a worldview that is sought to be communicated, which was not done before by a leader other than Nehru. I think that is a more larger perspective to look at Nalin.
Correct.
So may I,
Nalin?
Sabha, the point I'm trying to make, I think you misunderstood the point I'm trying to make, and with
I
due
just,
respect,
yeah.
I the point I want to make, Sabha, and I was listening to your response. I am not saying that one is better than the other. I am not saying that one is qualitatively different than the other. Discovery of India, the comparison between Exam Warrior and Discovery of India, as you point out, Discovery of India is a serious work of history. Exam Warriors is a book which is aimed as a self-help book for students. I'm not making a qualitative comparison. And I'm also not saying that this idea is better than that idea. What I'm saying
Yeah,
is
fair
that
enough. Fair
not
enough.
since Nehru has one prime minister, in terms of the parameters of what defines the idea of India, has had an impact. And what I'm saying is that the ideas that Nehru defined the playing field, as it were, of what was accepted as the politically correct ideas of what India consists of. Whether people, Congress, all non-Congress chief ministers, including Vajpayee, to a large extent. What I'm saying is that Modi brings a totally different idea of India, his dominance and the stature that he now enjoys, because he just changed the playing field in the realm of ideas. Therefore,
Right.
since Nehru, he is the most impactful prime minister on those grounds, and that is the comparison. Not whether one is better or the other. In fact, they are the exact polar
No, no, I'm
opposites
not
of each
saying
other.
that.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's
I'm
what I
not.
was trying to say.
No.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
pretty
fair
much,
enough.
just to sum it up, and what Nalin's saying is all the other prime ministers, including Indira Gandhi, followed Nehru's footsteps. This is the first time that the idea of India, as we say it, the Western liberal, secular, democratic idea of India is under threat. In that sense, he as a political figure, Narendra Modi as a political figure, has that kind of an impact in taking India in a different direction. And I think that's where the comparison comes up. But I'd like to move forward from that comparison to grassroots realities of 2021. I must say that this was a very interesting, perhaps one of the most civil exchanges on Nehru and Modi as ideas that I may have been involved in.
We
But
can, we can,
fascinating.
we can get, but Nalin
You
and I won't get uncivil.
no, you two can take the credit for it, Sabha. But thank you so much for bringing that contrarian point, which I think brings the better out of Nalin and when he's challenged. And I hope you'll do that for the rest of the conversation as well, because there are several things that we're going to put across to him.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
second part of it is really the second part of the book, where Nalin constructs a caste, an index which
Yes.
studies the caste of Uttar Pradesh, which I think is really the most significant part of the book. He constructs this data by analyzing thousands of candidates and leaders of the Bharatiya Janata Party, along with the journalist Sanjeev Singh, who's a fascinating mind in Indian politics, especially on Uttar Pradesh and its caste connotations. Nalin and Sanjeev together call this the Mehta Singh Index. Now, their argument and their analysis from that data is that the BJP has structurally, categorically shifted itself to become a party that is dominated, or if not largely, solidly finding a base amongst the OBCs for itself, which is, according to them, the tactical change in the BJP between 2009 and 2019. Now, this point has led to an intellectual exchange with the Trivedi Center for Political Data, Christophe Jaffrelou and Gilles Bernier, who tend to suggest, and I don't want to paraphrase anyone because this exchange is in public view. Both sides have written what they have to. Nalin starts the argument in his book. Christophe Jaffrelou and Gilles Bernier have responded to it on news18.com, and Nalin has responded to that. So I don't want to paraphrase anyone. So I'm just going to put this, but having given that context, I just would like to put this question across to you, Nalin. The conventional thinking was that the BJP remained a party which was dominated by the upper caste. Your data suggests a different story of the BJP's grassroots realities. Now, is it, as argued, just a classification? Now, there are two problems here. One is with the data, and the other is with the interpretation. There are two issues here. Let me start with the data per se. The argument is that it is purely your classification of certain castes that's resulted in your data set appearing different from the others. Now, if it is that, are you making a mountain out of a molehill of differences between you and other intellectuals?
Great. That's a great question, Veera. Can you hear me clearly, Veera? Because
yes,
when you
we
were
can
talking,
hear you very clearly. We can hear you very clearly, but you're breaking up in the middle. Nalin's.
Can you hear me, Veera?
Yes, we can hear you, Nalin. Please go ahead. Your audio is fine.
So I heard bits and parts of your question because of the audio disturbance, but I think I got the gist of it. It's a good question. Look, this is not making a mountain of a molehill for 2 or 3 specific reasons. The first reason is that look, this is not, look, I think there is a public debate going on between my argument, what's in the book, vis-a-vis what Christophe Jaffrelot has argued. And I think Christophe Jaffrelot is a great scholar. I grew up reading his work on Hindu nationalism and so on. And the work on his work now together with Christophe Jaffrelot and Gilles Vernier, and the database that the Ashoka University Trivedi Center for Political Data has set up. I publish extracts of the book. They publish a counter response. I publish a counter response to the counter response. That's in the public domain. People who are watching can look it up. But to your specific question, is this a mountain of a molehill? It is not, for 2 reasons. Because, firstly, I think they completely misunderstood what I'm saying. I am not saying, in fact, in my argument, I do not refer to upper caste at all. The simple point I'm making is that the argument that Christophe Jaffrelot has made in Modi's India, which is his latest book, is based significantly on the social composition of MPs and their caste based on TCPD data, and he specifically argues that the 2019 triumph and 2014 and 2019 more than 2014, and I'm paraphrasing, but he specifically says that marks the revenge of the upper castes. Right? And his data shows that upper caste representation among BJP MPs went up and is in fact the highest among all other political parties, and therefore he uses the word the revenge of the upper caste. My data is showing that actually upper caste representation did not go up. In fact, we didn't even look at it, we didn't even mention that. Our data shows what went up significantly, way out of normal increase, and not incremental, but paradigmic shift is on the rise of OBCs and to a lesser extent SCs. And in comparison to the TCPD and Christophe and Giles data, which is specific only to a social composition of members of parliament of this current Lok Sabha, which is published in academic articles by them, also in Modi's India and also in articles in the Indian Express, our data is specific firstly to Uttar Pradesh, number 1. Number 2, it is not just MPs. It looks at all MP candidates of 4 parties across 80 Lok Sabha seats in Uttar Pradesh in 2019. It looks at all 403 seat candidates by the 4 parties, SP, BSP, Congress and BJP in 2017. It looks at the caste of ministers in Akhilesh Yadav's government, which preceded Yogi versus Yogi Adityanath now. It looks at all BJP office bearers in Uttar Pradesh. And it looks at district level presidents of BJP, 98 district presidents. There are not 98 districts in UP, but BJP has 98 district presidents because some districts have more. And in all of them, here is what I'm saying. In Lok Sabha in 2019, there was a paradigmic shift with OBC and SC representation among BJP. In the Lok Sabha 2019, 57.5% candidates were either OBC or SC. In Vidhan Sabha, 52.8 UP. In office bearers, 50%. In the Ministerial Council of Yogi Adityanath, 48.1%. Among district presidents, 35.6%. Let me make this very clear. My argument is not that there is a social revolution happening. My argument is not that something significant has shifted totally in the realm of voters and all of that. My argument is that at the level of political representation at these 5 or 6 levels, from MPs to Vidhan Sabha candidates to ministers to office bearers to district presidents, the BJP brought in an entirely new caste of people, which were largely OBCs, and built a new social coalition, which was different on 2 counts from before. It was different from the BJP of before at all these levels, and it was different from other competing political parties. That is the claim, and therefore these guys have got it wrong. And that is the debate I'm having. That is the point I'm making. Secondly, and this is my final point before I think Sabha has a point of view on this, and so does Jay. Look, this is not a minor, trifling matter of classification. It's not just an academic debate. We are talking of UP. In UP, Jats have been classified officially in the constitution in the state list as 21 years ago, right? You cannot now, and by the way, Christoph and Gilles have not made a normative argument. They made a specific data-based argument, right? That data-based argument does not classify Jats as OBCs. How can you not classify Jats as OBCs in UP when they've been on the state list in UP for 20 years? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. Unfortunately, we don't have Christoph Jaffrelou and Gilles Vanier to respond to this. So may I? Yes, Jai, go ahead. But may I just request that
I'll go ahead of Nalin on this. I would not simply look at the representation, okay, but at the very support structure itself. And I think this was a sort of a bet and a light banter Sabha and I had when I did the 2019 Times Now exit poll. And I remember I said about 55 plus for the BJP in UP, and Sabha said, no, it's not happening. The arithmetic doesn't add, right? And of course, I mean, I have to admit, Sabha has been very sportive. The day the results came on air, she said, no, Jai, you're right, perfect. Now, that result, which you got in UP in 2019, 62 Lok Sabha seats out of 80, what was that result based on? So, I mean, we need to even go beyond the fact that this was the caste breakup of the representatives. If you look at the support structure, what all the poll data, all the polls that we did, what they repeatedly showed towards March, April 2019 was that other than a couple of specific communities, which had a very distinct identification with the SP and the BSP, almost all others had moved one side towards the BJP. That's why a combination as formidable as the SP-BSP, which had in 93 trounced the BJP in Uttar Pradesh, okay, it could not put up that sterling performance in 2019. And the data bore the support structure. I think one thing we all as analysts need to look beyond is look beyond at the immediate caste and community affiliations of the candidates. Even if we go a level deeper and look at the very support structures of the party, this starts showing up in the data.
Right.
So that's the
we request our audience to write in questions as well. But Nalin, I wish there was Christoph Jaffrelou and Gilles Vanier as well.
Absolutely, I would love to
this. And since they are not there, I think we leave that argument and what you've stated it. I'm just going to move further. Let's just keep that as a contextual argument and not go into the argument that you've had with them. I want to know as a pedestrian.
Veera, can I say one sentence, please?
Yes,
Veera, can I say one sentence, please? If you'll indulge me.
Yeah, please.
See, I want to make one thing very clear. I have not said that upper castes do not support BJP or they are not with BJP. In fact, the book makes very clear, and the Mehta Singh Index makes very clear, and so do our findings, that upper caste support remained with BJP between 2014 and 19. That was a constant. What was changed was the OBC thing. And that is an important point. That is what was the paradigmic difference.
Which brings me to my next question. Which brings me to my next question. What is the political consequence of it? Are you then arguing that the reason why this is important and needs to be taken note of is that while Hindutva may be a one election issue and an emotive issue at some points of time, the fact that the BJP is building itself as a caste architecture in Uttar Pradesh, which is widespread, makes it more difficult to undo the BJP than it would be if it was just reliant on Hindutva? Is that the argument you're making, that the deep roots is on the basis of caste makes the party much more formidable when it comes to its opponents?
Okay, I think that's a fantastic question. And I think Jay and I have had many debates on this, even when we were putting together this caste data. And Jay's team blind reviewed the data parallelly. We had teams without looking at each other's results, cross-checking each other and doing blind reviews of the data. We bashed it and we saw where the gaps were and so on. The fact of the matter is, this shows, see, there has too long been a liberal assumption, which I think is not based, which has been not in tune with the ground reality on the ground, irrespective of whether you're a liberal or not, whether you support BJP or not. The fact of the matter is that the BJP has been winning elections or more elections than it has lost, or doing better than it did before as compared to earlier, before 2014, because it has managed to get new groups of voters which are beyond the core constituency of Hindutva, which is 17-18%. Right now, whether these groups remain permanently with BJP, whether they go back, is a different question. That only time can tell. But the expansion of the great expansion of the BJP's electoral juggernaut that you have seen is based on the creation of a new social coalition. It's based on social re-engineering. This is one of the key factors. There are other factors too. This is not a simplistic one magic bullet solution. There are other factors. We'll talk about them separately. But this was a major factor. And the bringing of non-Yadav OBCs in UP and non-Yadav scheduled castes who entered the tent at multiple levels was a significant factor. To reduce that, to say that this is somehow the revenge of the upper caste, it's only upper caste who are driving it, I think completely misunderstands both Hindutva in the way it is working on the ground today or has been in the last 5 years, and the growth of the BJP.
Right. Sabha, would you like to add your thoughts to this?
Look, I think that there is very important data. Data is data. But I would interpret things also. It's also important who you give the leadership to. Let us accept that right now the BJP gave the leadership to a Thakur. And the result why you have people walking out is because they are saying there's Thakurwad. The reason why people have left, and they have said so on the record, is that it is dominated by Thakur. If you recall, Nalin, since you have quoted, I think, I've not read the whole book, but it's going to be invaluable. I will say one thing. In 2014, after Narendra Modi wins Delhi, the first round of assembly elections that take place are in the state of Maharashtra and in the state of Haryana. Please note, and I think you would have found that chapter in my book when I speak of them reversing the strategy of the non-dominant, of the dominant caste. They go with a Brahmin chief minister in the state of Maharashtra. The second most populous state in India is Maharashtra after Uttar Pradesh. They reverse the strategy of Dalits and Marathas, and this is the only second time in the history of Maharashtra that a Brahmin, which is was made the chief minister. The Bharatiya Janata Party does it, even though its victory has a lot of cross-party support. Next, in the state of Haryana, second round of elections, they go with Manohar Lal Khattar. They are giving a challenge to the Jats, and it's a non-Jat rainbow that they stitch up. When finally it comes, after stitching up all of this, we cannot overlook the fact that after this amazing social project, they chose a Thakur who revels in Thakurwad. That too, according to members of the BJP. No, let me finish that. Since Jai, you cannot get into immediate politics, because then by that you'll say if the BJP loses and the whole book is burned. So don't make that error. This is an important book. Can I finish? Jai, this is an important book. You should delink it from any election result. Number two, that Thakurwad, you please do not make the error of trying to defend this by the election result. What is going to come? Don't do that. But it is in 2019 that MLAs of the BJP sit down in protest outside the assembly against Thakurwad, not the other parties. So the BJP hands over the two most primary states of India, Nalin. You cannot ignore that. Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra to a Brahmin and to a Thakur. The dominant
I have an immediate point. Sabha, I've not been on TV for a lot of days. You would let me speak. Okay.
No, I'm just making the point. Yeah.
We'll have to let the audience speak as well. Sorry, Jai, Sabha, and Nalin, quickly, we'll have to let the audience speak as well at some point of time. So brief comments.
I have a point to make.
I'll exactly come to Sabha's point. See, this way of trying to deduce alleged, bias in a leadership or
I'm also giving you data, yeah. I'm also giving data.
It is fraught with danger. I'll tell you why. I'll give you two very surprising statistics. Not surprising. I'm not sure how many people are aware of it. A 2017 assembly election in Gujarat. Yeah. The incumbent chief minister was Mr. Vijay Rupani. He's a Jain. You know how many Jain candidates the BJP had all over Gujarat at that point? Not more than two. Wait, hang on. In 2018, in Karnataka, you know how many Brahmin candidates the BJP had? It's in single digits. It's maybe one. I'm not sure of the number, but it's in single digits. The point is that a logical deduction based on the caste of the leader first it leaves a picture incomplete about estimating the actual support base and how the support base continues.
No, I get the point. I don't think I'm not challenging that. Yeah.
The people who accused the BJP of XYZ castewaad and moved on, people forget that these people have moved on even before the 2002, 2007 and 2012 elections. From various other
Jai, you're getting very passionate. I agree. This is invaluable. I'm making an important, it's a data you cannot ignore. The two most important states in India are given to a Thakur and a Brahmin. That is
I'm
the BJP
saying
selection.
The data could be right, but there should not be a criminalization of a chief.
Let me just get Nalin quickly in because I want to move forward. And I think the more important question that I had raised was purely the consequence of all this data arithmetic that we as analysts keep talking about. What is the practical political consequence? You were talking about a party which swept with the Hindutva wave at one point of time. Have they created a social base so strong that it's more difficult to undo them in a state like Uttar Pradesh? And that comes to the opposition challenge. Nalin.
Okay. Sabha, firstly, I think I'd like to thank you for saying a very important thing, that the data in this book and so on is not, it shouldn't be linked to this election and so on. This is not a quickie. This is not a book which is based on one election and so on. This is capturing a snapshot in time over a period of time up till 2019 and is telling us the data is telling us what's happened, right? So it's a much deeper work, right? So thank you for saying that. On the points, substantive points that you made about Thakurwad and about Brahmanwad and the two examples you gave, I'd like to submit very respectfully that yes, there have been allegations of Thakurwad, no question. I want to submit to you 2 or 3 data points that while there's no question that Yogi Adityanath is unapologetic about being a Thakur, right? He is the Mahant of the Gorakhnath Peeth, which is the only Thakur Peeth in the country. Now, if you look at his Council of Ministers, it surprised me and I did not expect this. And again, data can only give you one part of the picture, it doesn't give you all the parts of the picture. It surprised me when I compared Akhilesh Yadav and Yogi Adityanath's cabinet and Council of Ministers. I did not expect this, that Akhilesh Yadav had 21% Thakurs as ministers in his government, whereas Yogi Adityanath has 11% Thakurs, including himself, as ministers. In fact, his government has 18.5% Brahmins, which are as opposed to 11% Thakurs as ministers, right? In the context of Thakurwad. In the question on the number of OBCs, it has more OBCs, 35% as opposed to Akhilesh, 31%. What happens is that when you see data like this, it immediately complicates the reality a little bit, right? Because we see in terms of just one chief minister, one leader. I can also point out that Narendra Modi himself is an OBC, right? He was not an OBC by birth, right? So what I'm trying to say is that in the dominant narrative, we've been used to seeing things from one prism, I also see it from that prism. But I think what this data is telling us is that the reality may be more complex. There may be other factors playing on. And I think we should think about it in a more complex manner.
I agree. I want to say one thing.
I will tell the audience, please read the book. Yeah, I will tell the audience. Yeah.
I agree, Nalin. It's an eye-opener to get this kind of data, but I will still insist because I believe it. Show me the members of this cabinet committee for security. You've got any OBC, any Dalit there? Ever. So besides Narendra Modi is beyond caste. Adityanath Yogi is not beyond caste because that is how people perceive him to be. Let's understand. Show me. Why is Nirmala Sitharaman there? Who is she? She's a Brahmin. Rajnath Singh is a Thakur. Nitin Gadkari, he's a bit out in the regime. Brahmin again. Let's go through. You
I
show
think there
me
are
the
answers.
OBC guy who's
No,
on
I
top.
think if
There
we,
is
if
a
we get
problem there.
this is,
Again, I
you see,
just
we
Again,
get stuck
I'm
in
the
1989.
yeah.
We'll get stuck in 1989 and reservations, and we can't move forward. I think there are
No,
bigger and
I'm just
larger
making.
issues. No,
I
hang on.
think this is eye
I get it.
opening.
I get it. I get it. It's a
Jay
fascinating
is
exchange.
getting upset. Nalin knows what I'm saying here. We are talking.
I'm
These
not
are also
upset.
people
Sabha,
who has the
Sabha,
power.
I have a,
I can be a.
I want to respond to this point, and I think Veera is right. If we get stuck on it, but I think this is something Jay and I have discussed in the past. I think a useful comparison, like, look, we haven't looked at the cabinet of the caste composition of Narendra Modi, particularly we're looking at UP. But I think the real comparison should be between the cabinets of all previous governments, and that's what will give
Absolutely.
you a thing, including of the UF and including of the left and the ministers they made, and with Modi. And I think the answers will be surprising. But
And I
that's a
think
comparison
You
to
know
be
what?
made.
I
you're
think
seeing
I
beyond
have another
optics and
data point.
faces into grassroots realities of the party and the party architecture. I think some of this data is not just about MPs or MLAs, but also about party leaders recruited by the BJP itself at that level. But I'll leave it there to it, and it's for those. I'm sure this can go on perhaps another session, but I want to come to a more important question because we only have 5 minutes before we open to the audience. And this is the question: is it from a chapter in the book which is dedicated to the BJP's Muslim model, or the lack of one, if I may say so. The fact that the BJP does not field a single Muslim candidate in a state like Uttar Pradesh perhaps gives them greater space to field candidates from other castes, and hence their proportional representation of OBCs candidates compared to other parties may be higher. My question is this, and let me start with Nalin quickly, and then more importantly, Sabha. How does the party in its narrative reconcile with this claim of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas when it refuses to field a community which has 18% population in the state, refuses to give even a single candidate to it? How does this, you talk about the unapologetic BJP Hindutva in your book, but how does it reconcile these two stark realities?
So that's an important question, Veera, and three, four responses to this. The first is that as far as BJP not look, polarization helps the BJP, including in Muslim-dominated seats because of counter-mobilization. No question about it. Statistically, I think then if you look at the numbers, it shows you that whether in Vidhan Sabha or Lok Sabha, right? Whether it is good for the normative discussion on that, let's keep that out for the second, because we're only doing the analysis of the question you asked. Now, as far as not giving Muslim tickets or not, keeping aside a value judgment on it, the figures are a bit interesting. This idea of not giving seats to Muslims and doing away with the political correctness of that is not new in the BJP. In fact, in 1991 and 96 Lok Sabha elections, the BJP also, I'm talking about UP, gave 0 tickets to Muslims. This was at the height of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement and the knock-on effect thereafter. It's only from 98 in UP and this new phase, the post-Palampur resolution phase of the BJP, when they started supporting the Ram Temple movement. 91, 96, 0 tickets to Muslims. 98, 1 ticket. 99, 1 ticket. 2004, 2. 2009, 1. 2014, 1. 2019, they did away. They gave 0 tickets, just as they gave 0 tickets in 2017 in the Vidhan Sabha election. What the calculation behind this was that, okay, we are not, our positioning is very clear, it's very aggressive Hindutva. We are not getting votes from this community, and therefore, and we have been playing lip service and doing the politically correct thing. It may help us more in a purely instrumental way if we do away with the lip service. It is also pertinent to point out that both in Lok Sabha, in Yogi Adityanath's Council of Ministers and in Modi's Council of Ministers, even though they did not field a single person from the Muslim community as candidates in Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha, there is a Muslim minister each. Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi there and another minister who was brought in from the upper house. Now, right or wrong, this is the calculation. Now, also, therefore, the increase in OBCs, at least in Lok Sabha, did not happen because Muslims were removed, because Muslims were basically not there anyway on that. In Vidhan Sabha, yes. But the BJP always fielded only a token number. And that tokenism, from the BJP's point of view, has been done away with. It helps the BJP in pure instrumental electoral terms and polarization on the ground.
Right, resulting in a situation where Ram Gopal Yadav will say that Akhilesh will build the temple faster if he comes to power, which is possibly the news of the day today. Sabha, quick thoughts on this, and Jai, quick
No, I
thoughts on
mean,
it before we open to the audience.
There's no mystery about it. The BJP, it's, I think Adityanath Yogi said it 80% versus 20%. So in their perception, they want to show a lot of Muslims. They want to show they're coming. That's how the ideological thing works. You want to unite Hindu society, which is divided on caste, through Hindutva and by showing the bogey of the Muslim. It's a very, very simple thing. There's nothing more to it. There is
Yeah, in
no
fact,
expectation. And
in
but I
fact,
just want to say we are talking. You've kept this about Nehru and caste, all the controversial things that we'll argue about. I just want to say that part two, the one about communication.
yeah, I was going to get to it, but I need time.
I want to
need time
say
to get to it.
that's outstanding. That whole section.
Yes, I know, and I think
And
I'm going
that's,
to indulge. I'm going
that's
to indulge.
good work.
Yeah, I'm going to request
that's
the
all,
audience to indulge me in it. I'm going to request the audience to indulge me in it, because part two of the book, which is fascinating, Narad Index that again
Yes.
Nalin creates with Rishabh Srivastava, which is a normative analysis of reporting and discourse, which involves BJP's discourses.
I think this is what makes the book a very important
very
book.
interesting. I think
It's
data
all of
analysis part
this
of
kind
it.
of data work that Nalin has done, and this part two is fascinating. And somebody like me can keep using it as to go back and to reference points for as one grows up. The words, all of that. That's like
Absolutely.
you're keeping us arguing about caste and Hindutva and Nehru.
I am not keeping you arguing,
You
ma'am.
could join. You
You
could
see,
join the
this is
national channel.
no. This is like blaming Nehru or Modi for all the problems. I am not keeping you, and I'm not drawing a comparison as well. I'm a good South Indian just listening to your conversations on caste, because
No,
we
but
had
you have moved. You have
yeah.
picked on exactly the things that make people argue. You first went with Nehru, then you went with caste, and then now you went with Muslims. I
You
mean,
see,
Muslims are not part of the game plan except as the enemy. To put it
this
very
is
simply,
this is how the South Indian keeps the conversation in even in UP dictated. Okay, so let me
yeah.
quickly go to the Narad Index, which I think is
That's very
important.
good.
And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Karnika, who's producing this show. We'll take audience questions in exactly 5 minutes from now. And Nalin, quick responses only from you on this. In your Narad Index, in page 117, you demonstrate how the party has different messaging internally versus externally. For instance, internally, it doesn't speak about the Congress. It speaks more about Modi. Externally, it speaks about the Congress much more. You also bring in the difference about bringing farmers' issues, etc., over terrorism and patriotism, which is often the impression that one gets. Give us a little bit example. Give us a little insight into that one particular paragraph in your book, which I found very interesting, was how demonetization did not hurt Modi. And I think it's a lot to do with the communication. And I quote you in the book, you quoting a voice on the field: the poor were willing to overlook their hardship, thinking that the rich were finding it harder. How
Yeah,
does the
true.
party manage its messaging so well? And what is the insight? And I think the greater and more important point, sorry, I'm stretching this, is the disparity between the Congress and the BJP in terms of the number of people who work on the Congress's social media machinery. You have Jairam Ramesh's quote there, really exposing that stark disparity. Isn't it dangerous in a democratic environment that you have such a stark disparity between the party which is ruling and, at least nominatively, the principal opposition party, having such a disparity in terms of resources for mobilization and messaging?
Thanks, Sabha, and thanks, Veera, for that, and thanks, Sabha, for mentioning this. So the Narad Index is basically, we put together both offline communications and online communications of the BJP and of other parties. So we put together something like 11,500 documents, BJP linked documents over a 15-year period. So all
Yeah.
their press releases, all their speeches. See, data can be very deceptive if you do a selective. So we put all their press releases, all speeches, all issues over a certain period of the Kamal Sandesh, which is the internal party organ of the organizer, all PM speeches by Modi, all the Shera speeches by the RSS chief, all issues of. We also looked at some of the RSS-linked organizations like the Banrasi Kalyan Ashram and so on. And then we examined the social media accounts of over 3 years of 75 political leaders across the political spectrum, both at the national level and at the state level. because there is difference in how Congress and BJP communicated at the state level as opposed to at the national level. And we looked at it both in English and Hindi. Right, I would have loved to have done it in regional languages too, but we did it in English and Hindi because often the results you get in different languages are different. So the interesting, and this allowed us to compare both the offline communication and online communication. One, at another level, it allowed us to compare the differentiation between the different faces of the parivar, if you like. What is the BJP saying as opposed to what Modi is saying, as opposed to what RSS is saying, and you can then see how the message is differentiated. Ideologically, everybody is on the same platform, but they're speaking to different audiences in different ways. Now, the results were surprising again. And the other thing is, look, I think all four of us on this panel are political junkies. I think we all read 4 or 5 papers a day. We've all tracked the BJP for over 20 years at least, and politics for that much of a period. But when I looked at this, it completely surprised me when the first cut of the data came, because we ran an algorithm and an AI algorithm which Rishabh developed, which allowed us to see things which the naked eye doesn't pick up. You know, the normal discourse in the paper or in the TV studios. So the first thing was that since not even in 2014, 2014 was an anti-incumbency election. Mr. Modi comes to power because there was widespread disaffection against the UPA and Mr. Manmohan Singh's government, and Mr. Modi was the new star on the firmament. But he benefited from that. But since 16 onwards, the BJP speaks most about the Congress. So it is positioning itself to external audiences as the anti-Congress. That to me is a very important finding. Second is that when it speaks to its internal, so when it's speaking to the non-converted, it is speaking more about the Congress, then it's speaking about Mr. Modi, of course, and then about itself. Right? When it's speaking to its own audiences through Kamal Sandesh, then Congress is not the most important thing. Because it doesn't need to tell it we are anti-Congress. That's the second thing. And I think the third thing, and I'll stop there, is that we see the BJP, or many liberals make the mistake of seeing the BJP as a one-trick pony, only Hindutva, only a certain position on Muslims. What the index shows us in different that they are speaking much more about many issues, including development and farmers. And again, this index was up till 2019, before the farmer laws came up. And speaking at levels below the headline and below the TV studio level, and allowing it to reach out to multiple audiences, which is why many of them have listened, have got attracted by that message, including on hot button issues like which have been the core issues of the BJP, the Ram Mandir, terrorism, 370. It has been speaking much more about other issues than these issues, at least when you see it programmatically at a volume level over a long.
Right. I think that's really an extremely interesting.
Just one point. Look at today. Quick point, today, because of Rahul Nalin, this data is so useful and important for all of us to get, because look at the hysterics over Rahul Gandhi's speech in Parliament on the outside, but we don't know what is. That's why I find it fascinating.
Filter bubbles and echo chambers are the BJP's strengths in terms of management as well. But I'm going to get down to this, the questions from the audience now, Nalin. I'm sorry, Sabha and Jai. We just have 10 minutes left, and I want to take as many as possible. First one is from Sonal Hay. Sonal Hay is saying, yours is turning out to be a pro-BJP book promoted by many problematic right-wing figures. Was that part of the plan to ride the right-wing wave? Nalin, I think you need to defend yourself on this.
Look, I think what readers make of once a book goes out, everybody reads the same text differently. If 4 of us read the same text, I think all 4 may have slightly different opinions on it. We may have our own opinion on it. I can tell you that as far as I am concerned, this book was deliberately, I tried my best to get out of the echo chambers, to keep my own positioning aside, to keep my own, look, you can never get 100% objectivity, right? Because you'll always have unconscious biases. There's no such thing as 100% objectivity. But I did keep all my opinions, whether BJP is right for India, bad for India, Hindu nationalism good for India, all of that aside, and consciously, imandari se, tried to understand the reasons why the BJP has grown in the way it has, which is why you will see that all the endorsements of the book, there are about 11 or 12 endorsements on the book, 3 are on the cover, not one of them is from the right. In fact, nobody from the right saw what is in the book. People like Professor Mahesh Rangarajan, the Vice
Yeah.
Chancellor of Triad University, who was earlier the head of the Nehru Memorial Library. People like Professor
Robin
Robin
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey,
Yeah.
a great scholar of media and politics and of communications. People like Professor Asadaron, the anthropologist at ANU. People like Professor Shubhashish Gangopadhyay, who was who was economic advisor to Chidambaram when he was finance minister. I made a conscious effort to have the manuscript read by people from different disciplines, political science, anthropology, history, people like Rohit Saran, who's the chief editor of the Times of India, people like, in fact, the people who talked about it. I was on a show with Asutosh last week on his show on Satya Hindi, and he called it a Shandar Kitab Imandari se likhi hui. The editor of HT Sukumar called it the first great political read of the year and a great book. Now, people like Manjula, on whose podcast I was on HT, none of these people can be accused of being
Yeah, exactly. So
on one end of the spectrum or the other. Now, if a lot of right-wing figures take a position on the book and say this is good, that is their prerogative. My job was to put out the thing. You judge it. It's your. I mean, there's nothing I can do about the judgment of it. For example, on this debate or on the data with Ashoka University and Christoph Jafferlo, BJP, Amit Malviya, and many BJP spokespeople have issued statements on it. They have tweeted on it. Now, my point is very clear. I have written it from an academic point of view to understand the reasons. How you view it is entirely your prerogative.
Right. Important
so
important
I
is
want
to read
to,
it.
can I add?
Read it before. Not really. I'm really sorry, Sabha.
No,
I
I
just
want to
want to
add
take
to
one.
that point. Okay, because I want to defend Nalin's capacity.
No,
There is a
I'm saying,
problem. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
go ahead. Read it and perhaps make the point. Maybe quickly, one line you can
Sabha,
just make a point.
quickly.
Sabha, quickly.
No, I think this is a very unfair ecosystem
Yeah.
because you're not just playing to your own personal prejudice. And this, because I've covered the BJP for so long, believe me, I've also been attacked just for covering them sometimes. How can you cover them? Secondly, when my own book Shades of Saffron came out, let me just tell you, among the people who called me up was ministers saying, "Acha, aapki kitab to achhi hai. Now do I take it?" Was Mr. Bhupendra? Yeah, he was reading it on the train. So it
Right.
does happen. We are political journalists. We cover things, and you cannot just carry your hate. It's not ideological. There is a so I must defend Nalin's right to
Right.
do a book without being embarrassed by doing a book.
And
That's
also,
all I
more
want to say
importantly,
here.
even
Yeah.
if you're an
Uh,
ideological opposition to the BJP, try and
yeah.
understand it to
I
build
mean,
your opposition, because
If
yes.
you
without
are
understanding,
pointing
you're
out
not going to be able to
things,
build your opposition.
if
I think
Quick,
this is
Nalin,
a
I'm
facts on the
going
very
to the
ground
next
important
research
question.
thing.
shows the BJP has done certain things right and has done this, pointing out on a factual basis that should not color the perception of that person's positioning. I think that is the problem in this country today, that and globally about the echo chambers. You'll never have an honest conversation if you're only going to reinforce your own opinion and all of that. I mean, but that's my view.
Point
No,
vehemently
I
made and
agree.
taken. Point vehemently made and taken. And I want to move forward to quickly one question. In fact, it was part of my questions list and I couldn't. This is from Shrishti Mehra. How has that changed the BJP, Nalin? And this is a very important question, and I expect a brief answer for this. Has the BJP has turned into a fringe that once was only RSS? Do they even need the, you see, how has that changed the BJP and as an organization? Do they not need the RSS anymore? That's the key part of the question. Do they not need, who needs who more?
It's an important question, and I would love to hear Jay and Sabha's view on it, because they've tracked both for a long time. My answer to that is that till about 5 years ago, the BJP was much more dependent on the RSS than it is now. That is
True.
because RSS cadres were the BJP's force multipliers. They still are. Ideologically, they are linked. There is no question on that. But the ground game the BJP has built and the kind of cadres it has built now, actually, the power equation on the ground has changed. That is a
Right.
short answer, especially I know we're running out of time.
Jai, a very quick answer to you from you on that. Very
I
quick.
believe post 2014, the lines have actually blurred. I mean, this sort of ideological synchronization of between the BJP and the RSS is the closest it has ever been in history. So I believe now after a couple of years, it's going to be difficult to even visualize the two separately. That's the way it's looking in the future.
Okay. Sabha, quick answer.
No, I won't. Let Nalin answer the questions. Yeah, it's his
He's
book.
already answered. He's already answered. And so then
No, I
you're like,
think I definitely think he has a point. I mean, it's during Modi's time that the expansion. I mean, there is something to. We have to see. This is a huge party now. with
Right.
huge infrastructure, with a very large social base.
Right.
We have to, like I'm saying, delink it from election results. This is
Correct.
important to understand how this process has happened. And so certainly, I mean, I've
Right.
forgotten what the question was, but yes, and there is actually a very interesting
But
tension
you're still
between
answering.
no, there is a very interesting tension. We don't have time to examine that. Nalin knows what I'm talking about, between what the RSS wants as the outcome in UP right now and what is suggested that the PM and the HM want as an outcome in UP. Calibrations within
Right.
all of them wanting to win. So we all know that. But I think Modi is the figure who has made the BJP. RSS has been trying. The RSS comes to his aid, but he's completely on top. It is Modi's era.
Right.
That's it. Huh?
Okay, quick. I think we only have 3 or 4 minutes left of this conversation. I want to get all your thoughts very quickly before I take the next audience question, if we have time, on your predictions for Uttar Pradesh 2022.
No, no,
Given
no.
that you have studied Uttar Pradesh so closely and all of you have written about it, do you think that there is a chance that the BJP could be undone in Uttar Pradesh? Quick.
We are not crystal ball gazers, but we should start with the psephologist, Jay.
I've stopped doing polls in 2019.
Look,
I don't have a
this
poll.
Sabha.
I think the tailwind, which is with the opposition, but they are coming up against the headwind of the BJP. That same structure, which is explained in this party. There is no doubt, having gone to the ground, the tailwind, just for others, is what the direction in which, but the headwind is also something that the BJP has. So I would be suicidal to predict what will
Yeah,
happen.
as a
I don't want
spokesperson,
to be.
as a spokesperson of the audience, I must say this is like all intellectual debates. We hear a lot of knowledge, but we don't have what we want to hear at the
No,
end of
because
it all. We don't
people
have
don't know. People
yes,
actually don't know. Neither side is certain. That's the
yeah.
reality. I think Nalin will vouch for that.
Yeah.
What do you
Right.
think, Nalin? Huh?
No, Sabha, I
Right.
agree
So
with you.
let me
I
let me
think you put it
rephrase that question.
beautifully.
Let me
Uh,
rephrase that question from another one of those audience questions, and this is our last question for the evening. Artistry by Sonali G asks, "What will it take for Modi and BJP to be finally, I don't want to use the word driven out of power, undone, if I may say so?"
Look, let me answer that question because I agree with what Sabha's analysis of the ground situation in UP was. And again, I still have to travel to UP. I traveled there 6 months ago. Sabha has just been traveling, so I've been reading her reports on this. The I think we make a mistake in saying that there's a liberal assumption that Modi is a black swan event. That once in a post-Modi era, once Modi goes, this whole apple cart will collapse. I think that's a cardinal mistake. Yes, Mr. Modi has built the new BJP with Amit Shah. Yes, this is a fundamentally different BJP from before. Yes, he brings a massive premium to the party still. If once in a post-Modi era, whenever that happens, for whatever reason, there will be a decline of certain percentage points. But to think that this party will not remain the primary
Yeah.
pole of Indian politics or among the top two poles is this. We have seen cadre building in this country in the BJP on a scale which is comparable on a national level only to the 1950s Congress. And that I say with a lot of care um, uh, at the national level. So when the Congress started declining in the 70s or before that, it took another 20 years for the impact of that decline to come in place with the rise of Mandal and all of that. And we're seeing the current Congress today. So BJP has built a grassroots structure which Mr. Modi has built, which is far above his persona, along with the persona that he carries currently.
Jay,
Okay, and
quick,
I
quick,
just
quick.
want to second Nalin's point very briefly. The structure of the CPM outlasted the tenure of Mr. Jyoti Basu. Even the AIADM case outlasted the shadows of Jayalalitha. Therefore, I also think that the sort of edifice that has been built, is here to stay for a while.
Right.
No,
There's only
Edifice.
one
let
point.
me be
There's
clear.
only
You can
one
lose
point.
One.
elections,
How
right?
long is that while is really the question.
I'm not making a point of winning or losing elections. I'm making a point of being a primary pole in the politics. So, sorry, Sabha, you were saying something.
Nothing. I just feel that one of the weaknesses, Nalin, and I have read parts of your book, not the entire. It's so huge, but
Yeah.
I have to say
So
that
don't.
you've also done such meticulous footnoting. So that guys don't get thing. I'm just pitching for the book. is that the bringing down of regional people that it seems to have happened with the BJP. That's all. The Congress is only surviving on regional leaders when the center
Yeah.
collapses. There's a little analysis there, but I agree with you. They have the cadre, they have the
The
structure. Yeah.
as a good South Indian, I think the undoing of the Congress started with the death of Y.S. Rajshekhar Reddy in Andhra Pradesh. I think that was a turning point event
True.
for the
Yeah,
state,
yeah.
and it was in those days that South India really mattered in national politics. But of course, we will hope that someday we will go back to the era of coalition politics for South India to get its due again. But anyway, I think we are out of time here. I have one last comment that's come from Ramachandran Ganapati from I'm I'm thinking Chennai, and I'd like to give that to you, North Indians, on this comment. He says, 70 years plus South India has seen caste. Uh, what does your crystal ball say about a metamorphosis happening? India ain't growing till a conversation primarily on caste ceases. Much like you asked me to cease the conversation on caste, Sabha, this audience request is to stop the conversation on caste. Do you think that ever happening in Indian politics anytime soon?
So I have great
Yes,
respect
Nalin.
for Mr. Ganpati. I just want to say that I think whether we like it or not, whether caste should be a part of the debate or not is a moot question. To quote Joey from Friends, like a cow's opinion, with due respect, sir. Basically, um, um, because on the ground, caste does matter, whether we like
Right.
it or not.
Sure,
Political
yes.
parties continue to make judgments based on that, whether it is all sides, not one or the other. And until the social structure in India changes, and we are a very long away from that, caste, we cannot wish away caste, whether we like it or not.
Right.
I'll just say
And the
one
proof.
quick point. One quick
Yes.
point. People who complain about this, which is it's always middle class people who belong to the upper caste.
Correct.
I
So
will say this
I
very
was going to
perverse
say
thing
the
to say.
same thing differently.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing differently. There
Mm,
was the series called Decoupled that was there,
mm.
and there was one quote that stayed with me at the end of it. Jinka jaat nahi hota hai, wo unchi jaat ka hota hai. This is to prove
I
that I
see.
can
Okay, okay. I
follow
have seen.
I can follow Hindi as well. So, but that's the end of this
Veera, that's very
conversation.
impressive. Your
So
Hindi is
that's
very impressive. I'm
I
impressed.
know. I wish my understanding of BJP was as impressive as yours. A fascinating conversation, fascinating book. I've
Yeah.
read it from cover to cover, and I think it really is an educative experience. If I may pitch for the book as the moderator as well, I think it's a fascinating book. The data analysis part of it, and I think was really outstanding because it it undoes several pedestrian understanding and peripheral understanding that one has of the BJP, as well as goes into some very deep ideological history positions of the book. So do pick up a copy. The intent of this conversation was to involve, engage, and entice you into buying more copies of the book. So I guess, Dalit, if you want any last word pitches for your book before we shut the show.
No, thank you, Veera, very much. I'm a bit embarrassed by your great marketing pitch. If the intent was to buy, I think the intent really was that, see, the point of this book, and I thought it was very difficult for me to write this book in the way that I wrote it, in terms of the positioning, and the words were very important, not just the data is one thing, but how do you write it? And because in today's India, everybody asks me, तुम्हारा agenda क्या है? तुम्हारा बीजेपी से कोई deal हुआ है? तुम्हारा
बिल्कुल
agenda क्या है?
बिल्कुल
Why
या हम्म,
Nobody sees anything else here, right? Everybody thinks you must be part of this bandwagon or that bandwagon. I think
या
being a conversation which is stuck between the two echo chambers is pointless because all of us have an opinion on the BJP, all of us have an understanding of
या
the BJP in one way or the other. And the point of it was, my position was, I wanted to understand for myself as somebody who's been following this and on what is really happening in this country. This is my answer to it based on the data and to the best level of objectivity that I could bring, that I could muster. Now, what I wanted to start was a new conversation to understand journalistically, sociologically, politically, and in academic terms what's happening in this country. If we can start that conversation, then I think I would have achieved my purpose.
Right. We can
या
start that conversation by reading the book. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in. I was just being a little unapologetic and unambiguous, like the BJP is about its Hindutva agenda, about what I was trying to do about the book here. But I was making the
I
marketing
would
pitch.
strongly endorse the book, and I
Yeah,
really want to support him again on this whole thing of being challenged and told that
correct.
you don't. That
Absolutely.
it's a very uncomfortable thing to
Nalin
have to
heralds
deal
the
with.
era of data journalism. Now we're moving towards true data journalism.
I mean that I've not finished the whole thing, but that second section is absolutely outstanding, Nalin.
It's
So and I'm
fascinating.
sure
Thank you.
I'll find more as I go along. It's so useful.
Thank you
It
so
will
much.
be. Thank you so much. Huh?
Thank
Right.
you,
Thank
Sabha,
you all.
Jay. Thank you so
Mm.
much. And Veera,
Thank
thank
you,
you
Nalin.
for
Thank you,
the
Veera.
close
Thank you,
reading.
Yeah,
Sabha.
Nalin, thank you so much, Nalin. I'm supposed to be the moderator. You're supposed to be the author. So thank you so much, Sabha, Jai, and Nalin for joining this conversation. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank
Those who
you.
wrote in to us. Maybe you can write in, if your questions were unanswered, you can write in to Nalin on his email ID. Or on his Twitter account, and I'm sure he will respond. He's quite active on all social media platforms, responding to every question that comes through about his book or his analysis or his data interpretation. Thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.